Good morning, students. Today's class topic is past perfect tense. Um, so I'm going to give you the class objectives and I need you to listen carefully, okay? All right, for listening, we will be able to identify past situations into different structures. In speaking, we will be able to express situations in the past, taking into consideration actions that happened first. In reading, we will be able to analyze actions that happened first and after in a timeline according to the reading. In writing, we will be able to construct a paragraph narrating situations they did in the past using that happened in the past. All right. So okay, so the past perfect tense is formed by the past of the auxiliary verb. Do you remember that the last week we learned the present perfect and that we have two auxiliaries depending on the subject that we are using. Do you remember what those auxiliaries were? Okay, the auxiliaries were have or has. Okay, but now today in this class for the past perfect tense, we are going to use the past of have, which is had. Okay, so the difference here and actually this the past perfect tense, I think it's a little bit easier because we only use one auxiliary for all the subjects. Okay, here we don't have to consider I, he, she, and we, you, they. No, we in this topic we are going to use um only one auxiliary, which is had. Okay, so we are going to use had for all the subjects. Okay, which I think that's why it's easier. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. Okay, for example, I'm going to use the subject he. He had let's say started. He has he had started. He had, which is the auxiliary verb. Started is the past participle of the verb. But what happened with this verb? What what happened with the verb? it's a regular verb. It's not irregular verb. Okay, you guys remember that we have a list of irregular verbs. And what about the other verbs? The other verbs are regular. Well, what do we do with those verbs? We just add ed at the end. Okay, you guys already know this. You guys know this, so this is how the sentence goes. He had started. Okay, this is the past perfect tense. Let's use a different subject. Let's say they. They had let's choose a verb. They had driven. Let's say driven. They had driven to Florida. It's where I live. Okay. They had driven to Florida. They had driven to Florida. Okay. They is the subject. Had is the auxiliary of the past perfect. Driven, the verb in the past participle form. Remember that this verb, it's the third column, okay? To Florida. They had driven to Florida. Okay, this is the structure of the positive sentence. Okay, so now let's see the negative. How do we make the negative? Let's use a different subject. Let's use Mary. Mary okay, if I'm going to make it negative, what happens here? What is the negative of had? Mary hadn't, let's say, Mary hadn't found the bracelet. Let's say the earrings. Let's say the address, hadn't found the location. Okay, Mary, these are positive. I'm going to okay, and this one is a negative. Mary, this is negative, okay? Mary hadn't found the location. Mary was maybe Mary was driving to Florida, but Mary hadn't found the location. Okay? If I'm going to make this negative, I just use the auxiliary in the negative way. Hadn't. Had, it's a positive. Hadn't, the negative. Okay? And remember that we are going to use the same for all the subjects. We don't have to use a different one if we use a different subject. It's going to be the same for all the subjects, for all of them. Okay? Mary hadn't found the address. How do I okay, let's practice another one. Let's say another negative. I'm going to use I. I hadn't let's use a different verb. I hadn't become famous. I hadn't become famous. Okay? I is the subject, hadn't the auxiliary verb for the past perfect tense. I hadn't become famous. Okay? This verb is a it's a irregular verb. Okay? So this is the past participle of the verb become. Become, became, become. Okay? Don't forget to practice your verbs. I'm going to be taking a test about the verbs. Okay? There is the only way that you can learn the verbs is studying them. You just have to remember them and use them. That's why I'm going to be sending you a lot of homework, making sentences, because you have to practice. If you don't practice, you won't learn, you won't remember. Okay? So when you practice, when you write them, when you think about the verbs, when you look at them, you are going to remember. Okay? But if you don't do it, if you don't work on your verbs, if you don't review them, if you don't read them, if you don't study them, you won't learn, and it will be harder and complicated. So I always tell my students, you have to learn your verbs. It's really, really important to learn your verbs. The 3 forms, actually. All right, so let's move on to the questions. to the interrogative. Okay? Can I pause this? Okay. So we're going to continue with the interrogative form. Okay. So how do I make a question in the past perfect tense? Who can tell me that? Okay. Let's work with this sentence. Okay. He had started. Okay, it's like it looks like incomplete. He had started what? He had started to work out. Okay. He had started to work out. That's a sentence, okay? It looks better, like, I think, like, complete. He had started to work out. How do I make a question with this? Who can tell me? What do I put first? Yes, I use the auxiliary. So I'm going to start. What's the auxiliary here? Had. Okay? Had. What is the subject? He. Had he. What is the verb? Had he started to work out? Had he started to work out? Had is the auxiliary, okay? The auxiliary of the past perfect. Had, we start the question with had. Had he, subject, started, verb, to work out? Had he started to work out? Don't forget the question mark, okay? Had he started to work out? Let's think about a different question. Let's think about a different question. Had they, let's use a different verb. Had they brought what? Let me think. Help me. Give me ideas. Had they brought food? Had they brought food? Had is the auxiliary verb. They is the subject. Brought, the past participle of the verb. Food. Had they brought food? Don't forget the question mark. Okay? Easy, right? All right, my dear students. I hope you understood this. All right. I am going to give you some exercises. We're going to practice a lot here in class. You're going to work in pairs. You're going to take turns. Um, we're going to write a lot of exercises, and you're going to work at home too. You're going to think about sentences. And the most important, I need you guys to practice your verbs. All right? And thank you for your attention. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.